Police dog digs desperately in an empty field. What it discovered left everyone shocked. The fateful patrol. The morning sun cast long shadows over Pinewood Springs. A seemingly quiet town hiding secrets buried deep beneath its surface. Victor Reed, a seasoned officer, stepped out of his patrol car, pulling his cap lower to shield his eyes from the glare. Beside him, Max, his loyal K9 partner, lifted his nose, sniffing the crisp air, sensing something unusual. Today's patrol led them to Miller Lot, an abandoned piece of land on the outskirts of town. Decades ago, it had been earmarked for a shopping center, but the project collapsed, leaving the area to be reclaimed by nature. Over the years, rumors had swirled about the place, whispers of strange lights at night, eerie noises, and even the occasional sighting of shadowy figures moving through the overgrown weeds. Probably just some kids sneaking around, Victor muttered to himself, but deep down, his instincts told him this was more than just a teenage hideout. Then, suddenly, Max froze. The German shepherd's ears shot up, body tense, his breathing sharp and focused. Victor immediately recognized the signs. Max was on high alert, which meant only one thing. Something wasn't right. "What is it, boy?" Victor whispered, stepping closer. Max didn't bark. Instead, with a sudden burst of energy, he lunged forward, racing toward a patch of tangled weeds near the lot's edge. His paws clawed furiously at the ground, sending dirt flying into the air. Victor felt his pulse quicken. He had worked with Max long enough to know this wasn't ordinary behavior. Max was trained to track scents, drugs, explosives, missing persons, but this reaction? This was something different. "Easy, Max," Victor said, kneeling beside the dog, but Max was relentless, digging deeper, his urgency growing by the second. Then, Victor saw it, a solid object beneath the soil. Not a rock, not debris, something man-made. His breath caught in his throat as he reached down, brushing away the loose dirt. What emerged from beneath the earth was a wooden box, old, weathered, and sealed shut with rusted padlocks. Victor's grip tightened. This was no accident. Someone had buried this here, and they hadn't intended for it to be found. He grabbed his flashlight, illuminating the wood. There was something carved into the surface. Samuel Kane, 1978. Victor's blood ran cold. Samuel Kane. That was a name every veteran officer in Pinewood Springs knew. A detective who had mysteriously disappeared in 1978 and was never seen again. No way. Victor's heartbeat pounded in his ears. This wasn't just a random find. This was something bigger. Why was a box with a missing detective's name buried here? And who had hidden it? He grabbed his radio, pressing the call button. "This is Reed. I need a forensic team at Miller Lot. I've found something." A crackle on the other end. "Roger that, Reed. What exactly did you find?" Victor stared at the box, then at Max, who stood beside him, panting but triumphant. Something that could change everything. The revealed secret. The wooden box sat there, old and covered in dust and dirt. Yet its weight wasn't just physical. It carried the burden of secrets long buried beneath the earth. Victor Reed took a deep breath, his fingers tightening around the crowbar in his hand. Max, his K9 partner, remained tense beside him, ears perked, eyes fixed on the box as if sensing something far more ominous than Victor could comprehend. What's inside this thing? A hidden crime? A long-forgotten secret? Or just another dead end? Victor shoved all doubts aside and focused on the task at hand. He slipped the crowbar into the box's crevice, applying pressure. The old wood groaned in protest before finally giving way, the rusted padlocks snapping under the force. With one final push, the lid creaked open. Inside was no corpse, no weapons, no drugs, but what Victor found was far more unsettling. Old files, cassette tapes, and a leather-bound journal, its cover marked with a single name, Detective Samuel Kane. Victor's heart stopped for a second. He had heard of Samuel Kane, a detective from Pinewood Springs PD who had vanished in 1978. His case was the kind that old cops still whispered about. One day, he was investigating something big. The next, gone. No body, no clues, no answers. Victor picked up the journal and flipped to the first page. The opening line sent a chill down his spine. "If you're reading this, It means I've failed. I got too close to something I wasn't supposed to find. Victor's breath hitched. A dark network exposed. As he continued reading, the words on the page began to reveal a truth more terrifying than he could have imagined. Samuel Kane had uncovered a hidden operation within Pinewood Springs, a network specializing in erasing identities and creating new ones. At first, Kane believed it was a government protection program, designed to give new lives to witnesses or those in danger. But as he dug deeper, he discovered the truth. It wasn't just helping innocent people, it was protecting criminals. It was selling identities to the highest bidder. And someone in the police department was involved. Victor felt a cold sweat break out on the back of his neck. This wasn't just some small-time fraud. This was systemic. It had been happening for decades. He turned another page, and his blood ran ice cold. Because there, in bold, black ink, was a name he never expected to see. Daniel Reed, his father. Victor froze, his pulse hammering in his ears. His father's name was listed among the people who had undergone identity reassignment. No, this has to be a mistake. But there was no mistake. Next to his father's name was a date, 1978, the exact same year Kane disappeared. Victor's world tilted. His father, Daniel Reed, had been a respected man, a dedicated cop, a hero. But if this was true, then who had he been before 1978? What was his father running from? What secret had he taken to his grave? Max let out a low growl, bringing Victor back to reality. Something still wasn't right. A noise, a rustling sound. Victor's instincts screamed at him. They weren't alone. He gripped his gun, scanning the darkness around him. Then, a twig snapped behind him. Someone was watching. Someone who didn't want him to uncover the truth. Victor's blood turned to ice as he slowly turned toward the sound, his finger hovering over the trigger. And that was when he realized he had just opened something far bigger than he had ever imagined. And someone was willing to kill to keep it buried. The investigation and a shocking discovery. Victor Reed stood frozen, gripping Samuel Kane's journal so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Daniel Reed, his father's name, was listed right there in black ink. A part of the same secretive identity reassignment program that Kane had uncovered before disappearing. His father had a past he never spoke of. Max let out a low, warning growl. Something wasn't right. Then, a noise. A faint click in the distance. Like a footstep pressing against dried leaves. Victor's instincts flared into overdrive. His heart pounded as he unholstered his gun, eyes scanning the darkened edges of the abandoned lot. "Come out," he barked. His voice sharp, commanding. No response. Just an unsettling silence stretching into eternity. Victor's pulse drummed in his ears. His fingers tightened around the trigger. If someone was watching him, they weren't going to reveal themselves that easily. A shadow moved near the tree line. Max snarled, muscles coiled, ready to lunge. Victor's body tensed, preparing for a fight, but then, the shadow was gone. Nothing but darkness remained. Whoever had been there was already gone. Uncovering old files. 15 minutes later, Detective Olivia Grant and Officer Marcus Hayes arrived. The tension in the air was palpable. Victor didn't say a word. Instead, he slammed Kane's journal onto the hood of his car. "Read it," he ordered. Olivia furrowed her brow but obeyed. As her eyes scanned the words on the yellowed pages, her expression shifted from confusion to pure shock. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. Marcus leaned in, reading over her shoulder. "What the hell is this?" Victor pointed at the list of names. His voice was eerily calm. "My father is on that list." Marcus's eyes widened. "Wait, Daniel Reed? Your dad?" Victor nodded slowly, but the weight of the revelation felt like a punch to the gut. Olivia carefully turned a page, revealing a timeline of events, detailing how certain individuals had been assigned new identities. Then she saw it. The year 1978. The same year Samuel Kane vanished. The same year Daniel Reed's new identity was established. A chilling realization hit all three of them at once. Kane had been investigating a conspiracy much bigger than anyone had realized, and Daniel Reed had been right in the middle of it. But had his father been a victim, or part of the system? Victor refused to believe his father was corrupt. The man he had grown up with was honest, respected, and devoted to justice. But the evidence was telling a different story. Someone else is out there. Marcus suddenly stiffened, eyes darting toward a patch of disturbed dirt near the lot's entrance. Hey, guys, look at this. They followed his gaze. A footprint. Fresh. Victor felt his stomach drop. Whoever was here was listening to us. Olivia murmured. Victor clenched his jaw. They knew I'd find this. Marcus frowned. So why didn't they try to stop you? A thought struck Victor like a lightning bolt. Because they wanted me to find it. Because this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. His phone buzzed in his pocket, yanking him from his thoughts. Unknown number. You're in over your head. Read. Walk away while you still can. Victor's blood turned to ice. Whoever was behind this, they were watching him. And they weren't done yet. The lost sister and a greater conspiracy. Victor Reed sat in his patrol car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Olivia Grant and Marcus Hayes sat beside him, their eyes glued to the laptop screen. Lines of classified data scrolled rapidly before them, evidence of a decades-old identity reassignment program. But among the endless names on the list, one stood out like a gunshot in the dark. Charlotte Reed. Victor's breath caught in his throat. No, it couldn't be. Wait. Olivia's voice wavered. You recognize that name? Victor stared at the screen, his pulse pounding in his ears. Recognize it? That's my sister's name. Marcus turned to him, confused. But I thought. Victor shook his head sharply, his mind spinning. My whole life, I believed I was an only child. My father never once mentioned having a daughter. I have no memories of a sister. Silence. The air inside the patrol car grew thick with tension. Marcus hesitated before asking, so if this is real, why did your father keep her a secret? That was the question Victor couldn't answer. If Charlotte had been erased from their lives through the identity program, what had happened to her? More importantly, was she still alive? A secret too dangerous to hide. Marcus tapped away on his laptop, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen. I found an address linked to the new identity, he muttered. Victor didn't hesitate. We're going there, now. He had spent years chasing other people's secrets, now. It was time to uncover his own. The house in the shadows. An hour later, they arrived at the edge of Pinewood Springs, where an unassuming house stood beneath towering pine trees. The place looked ordinary, but Victor's instincts screamed otherwise. Something felt wrong. Max whined softly, his ears twitching. He was sensing something too. Victor placed a hand on his gun. Stay sharp. The three of them moved in, guns drawn. Victor knocked. 3 sharp raps on the door. No answer. Another knock. Still nothing. Victor glanced at Marcus and Olivia. We're going in. Marcus tried the handle. Unlocked. That was the first bad sign. Victor pushed the door open, stepping inside into eerie silence. The house was lived in, but abandoned in a hurry. Chairs were pushed back hastily. Papers were scattered across the dining table. A coffee cup sat on the counter, half full but cold. She was here, Olivia whispered, but she's gone now. Victor felt his stomach twist. Someone had been here recently, and someone had left in a hurry. Then, Olivia picked up a photograph from the table. Her eyes widened in shock. Victor, you need to see this. Victor took the photograph, and his blood ran cold. It was a picture of his father, standing next to a woman who looked eerily familiar. Charlotte. But that wasn't what sent a chill down his spine. Standing just behind them in the photo was Police Chief Caldwell. A warning too late. A rush of realization crashed into Victor like a freight train. Caldwell knew. He muttered. He knew about Charlotte. He knew about my father. Caldwell had been involved in the identity program from the start. Before Olivia could respond, a noise outside. A car engine roared to life in the distance. Max barked sharply, bolting toward the window. Victor rushed after him, just in time to see the taillights of a black sedan speeding away down the road. Marcus swore. That was someone watching us. Victor's heart pounded in his chest. Was that Charlotte? Olivia asked. Or was it someone taking her? Victor didn't know. But one thing was clear. They weren't the only ones looking for her. And whoever got to her first might decide she was better off staying missing forever. The showdown with the powerful. Gunfire shattered the silence inside the abandoned warehouse. Bullets ricocheted off rusted metal beams, sparking in the dim light. Victor Reed moved swiftly, pulling Charlotte behind cover as Max snarled fiercely, his body tense like a coiled spring. Across the room, Police Chief Caldwell stood firm, his gun still smoking from the shot he had just fired. His expression was unreadable, calm, almost smug, as if he had already won. "I warned you, Reed," Caldwell said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You had your chance to walk away. But now you've gone too far." Victor gritted his teeth, his pulse hammering. His shoulder burned from the graze of a bullet, but he wasn't backing down. "I know everything, Caldwell. The identity reassignment program. The people you helped disappear. You weren't protecting innocent lives, you were selling them to the highest bidder." Caldwell smirked, unfazed. "You think you've cracked the case?" he scoffed. "Reed, you're just scratching the surface. This system is bigger than you. Bigger than me. You can't stop it." Victor tightened his grip on his gun. "Maybe I can't, but I can make damn sure you don't get away with it." "The trap is sprung." Before Caldwell could respond, a voice crackled over the police radio strapped to his belt. "Chief, we have a problem." Caldwell's jaw tightened. He grabbed the radio. "What problem?" "It's the live broadcast, sir. Everyone is watching." Caldwell's smirk vanished. His head snapped toward the corner of the warehouse, where a laptop sat open, camera still rolling. It was streaming everything. Every word he had just said. Every admission of guilt. Live. To the entire Pinewood Springs Police Department. Caldwell's face darkened. He had been played. Victor allowed himself the slightest smirk. "I don't need to stop the system, Caldwell. I just needed the world to see the truth." "The last stand," Caldwell growled, his hands clenching into fists. "You're dead, Reed." He raised his gun. Victor fired first. A single shot, clean, precise, slammed into Caldwell's shoulder, sending him spinning backward. His gun clattered to the ground. Max lunged, teeth bared, pinning the fallen chief down with an earth-shaking snarl. Olivia Grant and Marcus Hayes burst into the warehouse, guns drawn. "Drop your weapon, hands where we can see them," Olivia barked, but Caldwell just laughed. Blood stained his uniform, but his eyes still gleamed with something dangerous. "You think this is over?" he rasped. "This is just the beginning." Victory with a shadow. 1 hour later, Caldwell was in handcuffs, surrounded by police officers. The department had turned on him. His entire operation had collapsed. But Victor couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. As he stood outside the warehouse, watching the flashing red and blue lights flicker across the night, Charlotte stepped beside him. "Is it really over?" she asked. Victor exhaled. "I don't think so." She frowned. "Caldwell said we were only scratching the surface." "Yeah." Victor looked at the bloodstains on his sleeve. "And I believe him." As he spoke, his phone vibrated in his pocket. "Unknown number. You took down the pawn. But the king is still in play. See you soon, Reed." Victor's stomach twisted. Caldwell was in chains. But the real power? The one controlling everything from the shadows? They were still out there. And they were watching him. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Justice is served, but the mystery remains. Gunfire echoed through the abandoned warehouse, the acrid smell of smoke and gunpowder filling the air. Caldwell collapsed to the ground, his breath ragged, a fresh gunshot wound bleeding through his uniform. Victor Reed stood over him, gun still raised, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. Max growled menacingly, his body tense, ready to strike again if needed. It was over, or at least, this part of it was. The reckoning. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The flashing red and blue lights cut through the darkness, illuminating the chaos of the scene. Officers flooded the warehouse, securing the area, collecting evidence. The truth had finally come to light. The files found in Samuel Kane's journal, the tapes, the confessions, all of it had been recorded. All of it had been broadcasted live across the Pinewood Springs Police Department. Caldwell's long-hidden conspiracy had been exposed for all to see. As officers placed him in handcuffs, his bloodied lips curled into a twisted smirk. He looked up at Victor, his eyes dark and defiant. "You think you won?" Caldwell rasped, his voice hoarse but still filled with arrogance. Victor stepped closer, his expression unwavering. I don't think. I know. But Caldwell just laughed. You're a fool. Reed, you think taking me down means anything? I was never the one pulling the strings. Victor felt a chill run through him. Then who was? Caldwell's smirk widened. You'll find out soon enough. And when you do, you'll wish you had never started digging. Victor's jaw clenched. Caldwell wasn't lying. The way he spoke, the confidence, the lack of fear, it meant that someone else was still out there. Someone more powerful. Someone who had been controlling everything from the start. This wasn't over. Not even close. The truth uncovered, but not complete. As Caldwell was dragged away, Olivia Grant and Marcus Hayes joined Victor outside. Charlotte sat on the back of an ambulance, a blanket draped over her shoulders, her expression still filled with shock. Victor approached her. You okay? He asked. Charlotte nodded slowly, but there was uncertainty in her eyes. I guess. I just thought that when this was over, I'd feel different. Victor understood. They had spent so much time chasing the truth, but the truth they had uncovered only led to more questions. Charlotte took a shaky breath. Caldwell said there's something bigger out there. Do you believe him? Victor didn't even hesitate. Yeah, I do. And that terrified him. A message from the shadows. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. You think you've won? You've only broken one piece of the machine. The rest is still turning. Victor's stomach twisted. He showed the message to Olivia and Marcus. Marcus swore under his breath. Who the hell is that? Victor's grip tightened on the phone. Someone who's still watching us. Charlotte shivered. If the program is still running, does that mean? Victor cut her off. It means we're still in danger. Olivia exhaled sharply. So what now? Victor's eyes darkened. We keep digging. A victory that feels like a defeat. The world knew the truth now. The corruption, the conspiracy, the lies. It was all out in the open. But the real fight? It was just beginning. Because whoever was truly behind this, they weren't done yet. And neither was Victor. The hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun. An open ending and a sign of what's to come. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a crimson glow over Pinewood Springs. But for Victor Reed, there was no peace in the sunset. It didn't feel like the end. It felt like a warning. The case was closed. The police chief was in handcuffs. The identity reassignment program had been exposed. But deep down, Victor knew the fight wasn't over. Unanswered questions. He stood outside the Pinewood Springs Police Department, staring at the reports scattered across the hood of his patrol car. Files on the identity program. Documents exposing years of corruption. A list of people who had been erased and given new identities. But something didn't add up. There were missing names. Someone had deleted key records, names, dates, entire identities. Someone had covered their tracks. Victor clenched his jaw. Who the hell did this? And why? He already knew the answer. Because Caldwell had never been the mastermind. He was just another pawn. And the real power? The one pulling the strings? That person was still out there. A warning in the dark. Charlotte approached him, arms crossed. So, is it really over? She asked hesitantly. Victor didn't look up. His fingers tightened into fists. No. Charlotte sighed. I figured as much. She turned her gaze to the horizon, where the last slivers of daylight faded. If everything was really finished, then why do we still feel like we're in danger? Victor didn't answer. But she was right. If the people behind this had truly lost, Victor and Charlotte wouldn't still be alive. Unless they weren't considered a real threat yet. A chilling thought crept into Victor's mind. Had they only been allowed to uncover what someone else wanted them to find? The unknown message. Just then, Victor's phone buzzed. Unknown number. You think you won? You only removed a piece of the puzzle. The real game has yet to begin. Victor's heart pounded. He quickly checked the sender, but there was no trace. No number. No way to track it. Whoever sent the message knew how to stay invisible. Olivia and Marcus stepped closer. What is it? Olivia asked, noticing the tension in his face. Victor held up the screen. Marcus swore under his breath. Jesus, we're still being watched. Charlotte took a step back, her face pale. What do we do now? Victor exhaled, his mind already working through the possibilities. We keep going. We find out who's behind this. Olivia frowned. You really think we're ready for that? Victor met her gaze. No, but we don't have a choice. The hunt is far from over. The night settled over Pinewood Springs. But Victor didn't feel like resting. The people who had built the identity reassignment network were still out there. They were watching. They were waiting. They were planning their next move. And so was he. The case wasn't over. It had only just begun.